What's up? This is the Brett Snodgrass Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me today. I am super excited for this particular episode because you guys are not going to want to miss this particular episode because actually I'm getting interviewed by my good friend Michael Stansbury. So number one, if you haven't heard of Michael Stansbury, go to episode 79 and listen to the episode that I interviewed with Michael Stansbury. But Michael's coming on this particular episode, and you're going to see more of Michael and his face and his voice a lot because Michael is actually joining the podcast, sometimes as a co-host, but most of the time he's going to be doing some interviews on his own with some other guests. Now, that puts me to the next thing is that this is actually the final episode of the Brett Snodgrass Podcast. So we're transitioning out of the Brett Snodgrass Podcast into another podcast. And why are we doing that? Is because I'm really just trying to fade in the background and take my name out of it, to be honest with you. We're going more that Iron Deep is where we're going, and that's going to be a platform of podcasts. And we're still going to be doing podcasts with entrepreneurs with a purpose, and paving the way for faith and for leading their families and their organizations. But we're not going to be calling the Brett Snodgrass Podcast anymore. I'm still going to be on there doing interviews, but Michael Stansbury is actually going to come on. He's also going to do some interviews. And the thing that God, I think, has told me more is more voices, more faces. So we're expanding the podcast. We're going to be using a different name, and we're going to talk about that more as well. So with that being said, I'm sorry, this is the final episode of the Brett Snodgrass Podcast, but we're transitioning into something greater and better during this season. Make sure you guys go over, check out again. Iron Deep is really what we're going after, guys. Building a community of men that are business owners, entrepreneurs, business leaders that are going after living out their true identity, purpose, and legacy through Jesus Christ. That's who we're going after, and that's the community that we're building. So that's what this podcast really is going to be about. We're going to be interviewing people that really hit that profile and really can help you guys out. So that's being said, I think that's about it, but I want to introduce you guys to Michael Stansbury and myself as I do this interview about the final episode of Brett Snodgrass Podcast. Thanks, guys. I'm with my good friend, Michael Stansbury.
Yes, excited to be here, Mr. Snodgrass.
Is that how you say that?
That's how you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got the sports announcer voice, man. You used to be a sportscaster, right? That's what you wanted to be growing up, and
right. So from the age of, we grew up in the 80s, and you listen to radio and sometimes TV, but radio was more. We listened to a lot of sports on radio, and then sports on TV. But what made those the sports great was not only just sports, but the broadcasters made it great. And I wanted to be at the ball game broadcasting, doing play-by-play. That was a dream. Did it for a little while, then realized it doesn't
pay the bills.
It wasn't what I wanted, because in a life you have your right to change your mind. So, right. Still enjoy sports.
Yeah. Who is your favorite sports broadcaster?
Yeah. So the best sports broadcaster to ever, grace a microphone in my mind was Jack Buck of the St. Louis Cardinals. Now that's a homer answer because I'm a big Cardinal fan, but I loved the way that he would, if there was a rain delay, he could keep you entertained. They wouldn't go to like, hey, we're at a rain delay. We're gonna share this old broadcast from 1985 or whatever. But he would just tell stories. Wow. And you'd be enthralled. So he was good. Vin Scully of the Dodgers is second, but there's a lot. There's a top 10, but no one I think alive. Did Vin Scully pass? I don't know if Vin Scully's still with us or not, but no one alive is in the top 10.
Yeah, interesting, man. That's so awesome. Yeah, that's crazy. I just love to hear your story just behind that, but. This is a different type of episode, guys. So number one, interviewing Michael Stansbury, and he's on obviously the podcast with me today. He was on podcast 79. We got to hear from Michael Stansbury about his family, 4 kids, husband to Deidre, man of God, owns a real estate business in Memphis, Tennessee. Just an awesome guy, and he went to the very first Men's Awakening through Iron Deep. So got to really help, and you spoke there. So thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for being a part of Iron Deep. Thank you for being who you are, man. You're awesome.
Hey, Try. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, this is a little bit of a different type of show, guys. So number one, out of a lot of praying and just a lot of reflection, we're kind of making a shift right now. So as you guys know, I've talked about Iron Deep a lot and just kind of my passion for that, my passion to really pour into men and entrepreneurial men and what that's going to kind of look like, and what God has been doing through Iron Deep and that ministry. Really been talking a lot about that, and I've had the Brett Snodgrass podcast now for 100 plus episodes, and when doing that, I've been podcasting in general. I think I started in 2017, so we're going on 6 years here. And it's been awesome. We've done some real estate podcasts, wholesaling podcasts. That's been great. And then we transitioned to the Brett Snodgrass podcast, which again was kind of that filler of, didn't really know what to call it, right? So you just kind of call it your name, and that was great. But I think really what the Lord has been showing me with the vision of Iron Deep is, which we're only going to talk about today. And I brought Michael Stansbury on this particular podcast because, I've asked who would love to just be a part of this community, this organization, and Michael's raised his hand, and he said, "I would like to be a part of this." And you're awesome, and you're just you're into, you want to do podcasting, so here we are. So Michael,
right,
is actually coming on. And you're going to see his face more, and you're going to hear his voice more. So thanks, Michael, for doing that.
Yeah, I'm
feedback?
excited.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the feedback. Feedback is I get to kind of hijack the Brett Snodgrass podcast, and we get to talk about what we're doing in the transition and kind of find out, hey, where are we going? So what's cool is, we've been, your audience has been with you for a while, and we all change, and that's good. Growth is good, and we're going to go into the why and where we're headed. So I'm excited to kind of hijack your podcast and interview Brett Snodgrass and kind of draw you out. So excited. And this is something that, again, this scratches that itch you talked about earlier about, hey, you get that broadcast voice. And I did do some television and some sports broadcasting. It never leaves you, because you really want to find the right reason to do it and get it. And really, one of the things that I can notice about, where you went from podcasting about wholesaling, about real estate, and then you transitioned to Brett Snodgrass podcast, where you got into the deeper meanings of, hey, why do we do what we do in the first place, and how do we do it, and how do we really reflect who our true identity is in? And I think that's part of it, and that's why I'm excited about it, because that's where I am as well. Is I've got this business that I do, but really, how do I want to affect other men? How do I want to see those guys, the people, our audience, and the people that are associated with Iron Deep grow in their relationship with God? What does that look like, and how can we help be a conduit for that? If that makes sense. Yeah. So, with that being said, Brett, hey, what are the changes that have happened in your life last 6 months? Kind of give us an update there.
Yeah. No, thanks, Michael. Yeah, there's been a lot going on. Number one, as you guys know, if you guys have heard my story, been listening for a while now. So I was able to step out of the real estate business almost 3 years ago. Brian Snyder took over as CEO of our real estate business. I still owned it, and I got to really sit in. If you think of sports, I got to sit in the owner's box, and that's been awesome, right? So I'm not the coach and coaching the team and the players on the field, or coaching my real estate team. I really got to sit in the owner's box and just root them on and say, great job, guys. And I got to celebrate them. And that's been great for the last 3 years. And it's really gotten me a lot of time to heal, honestly, because, Michael, I've been doing real estate and just business for 16 years now, which is kind of crazy to say. But it can kind of play a toll, right? You put your heart and your sweat and your tears into it, keep sleepless nights, and you're trying to run this team and do deals. And after 16 years, I was able to step out in the owner's box and root them on, and that's been awesome. But there has been a transition that has taken place. So one change is that, Brian Snyder had accepted a full-time position, which is amazing. I super celebrate him. And with the real estate market to where it's at, I felt like it was time for me to step back a little bit more into real estate and kind of take the reins on that again. So really that's been in the last few weeks. I've stepped back in as CEO of the Simple Wholesaling team, and And it's been good. It's been interesting, and it just kind of getting back in that, and what is that going to look like? The Lord knows, but that's been one change that's kind of happened in my life. But with Iron Deep, really, again, sitting in the owner's box really got to help me dream again. And I think that as a 40-year-old man, I think that we, somewhere along our journey, somewhere along our entrepreneurial journey, we stopped dreaming, right? I think maybe you can relate to that. And I started to dream out what is really the meaning behind my life. What is God calling me to? What is my identity in? And how can I live out my purpose and leave my lasting legacy? And that's what I've been kind of like thinking around and focused on. That's when Iron Deep was born. I've always wanted to impact men's lives, and then I've always been around entrepreneurs and business owners. So I said, okay, let's just niche that down to I want to impact men's lives that are business owners, and I want to really affect the kingdom. And I was like, what a better way if I can impact men's lives that are business owners and very influential, but I can impact their hearts, and they can go out and do some amazing things for the kingdom in their organizations or their families. And really that's what Iron Deep is about. So I've been dreaming about it. We hosted our very first event in September in the Rocky Mountains. You were there, and the response was it went really, really well. It was kind of staggering where like, wow, I thought I needed this. I knew that I needed something like this. And then I realized that other men need this as well. So that's kind of like some of the things that's been going on behind Brett Snodgrass's life. So
the Iron Deep, I remember when we first talked about this, and this was relatively, I just met you, I think at a CG event, maybe in Florida, and then we had talked via email, and you had mentioned this, and I said, hey, I think we had ruminated over Guatemala because we'd both been there and both been affected by different organizations. We'd going down there, but we'd seen the same things, and it had the same effect on us. So we had that in common. And then of course we have real estate in common. And then the coolest thing that we had in common was the fact that, we both gravitated toward our relationship with Christ. And we talked about that. And then when you were setting the foundation for what you wanted on Iron Deep, and then the first event happened in Utah, what was it like when you got home, that 72 hours? I know what it was like for me, but as somebody that, this actually, not only it was pulled off, it was amazing, but what was that 72 hours like? What was downloaded on your spirit? What did you see? How did you see it going from there? What was that like?
Yeah.
What was the takeaway, the big takeaway?
Yeah. Well, number one, a lot of entrepreneurs listening right now, and I've never done anything like this particular thing. So it's so funny that a lot of times we just get into our comfort zones. I remember when I started the real estate business, never flipped a house before, never bought and sold a house. That first deal was like, it was so, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're actually doing this. Like, this is crazy. I'm going to flip this and make some money, and that's crazy stuff, right? And then after 3,000 of them, you're like, oh, okay, whatever. We've done that before, right? This was the same thing, right? It's the same thing, but it was so much deeper and more meaningful because it had the kingdom purpose behind it. A lot of lives are involved in men's lives, and you kind of think of this thing in your head, and you've been praying through this, and you put a lot of energy into it and a lot of prayer and hope into it, thinking, man, I don't know how we're going to do this. God, you give me the strength to pull this off. How am I going to lead 26, 27 guys through this kind of program that is different, right? It's unique and it's different. How am I going to do that? And then we did it, and God showed up, and he's good. And we realized, wow, like he shows up and he meets people where they're at, and he loves them, and he's running after us all, and he's pursuing us, and all we got to do is to say yes and to come home, right? And really that's the part of Iron Deep is just are we going to choose to come home? And really that's where it landed. So yeah, when I got home from that event, it was number one, I was like, I was like, wow, I had some exhaustion, right? Because we put a lot of energy into that, but just like we did it. I think God was glorified through it, and it was more of, yeah, what do we do next? Where do we go from here? We put a lot of energy in this one event, and we've seen events, and people go to retreats and they go to camps or whatever it is, and they have that mountaintop kind of event, and they get a lot of great stuff out of it, and then they go home, and a week later they get back into their own lives, and that's it. So I think the first thing that really came to my mind was, I don't want to do that. I don't want this to be a one event and come home and that's our life and we had this great experience and let's remember that and great. I didn't want Iron Deep to be that. I said I want to really, the whole point is how do we really bring a community of men together, and how do we continuously walk with them and sharpen them and go deeper with them and have them stop and reflect on what's important and purpose and identity and legacy, and how do we really do that? So that was my first thought. And I don't have all the answers to that, but my first think is, how do we really build a community of that, and not just to have those one mountaintop experiences. So a thought for mine was, post the retreat and the men's awakening was great, but really it was, man, after that is more important. That's what I really thought. It's like, after that is more important, because when they go home to their lives and they have their work and they have the enemy attacking them and all that, like, how are we really going to sharpen and walk with them through that? So that's my first thought. My next thought was, yeah, I need this, and other people need this. This is kind of something that they're looking for, because we've been part of groups, and I've been a part of other groups and mastermind groups and real estate groups and networking groups, and you've led BNI groups and business groups, right? And those are great, and it's awesome, and we get a lot of great resources in business, but I wanted to do something that was just a little bit different, that maybe was just more unique and harder to find. That maybe it was taking some of the stuff from the business groups and the mastermind groups and networking groups, great. Some of the stuff maybe from the church and small groups and some of that, great. Let's try to put all that together, and then let's add just more things, undistracted environments, right? Surrounded by God's glory. All men of the same driven mindset. Just all of that put together is really, some things I'm kind of thinking around this community. And so those are some of the initial thoughts after coming home.
Well, one of the things I can just attest to is the curve that you have in relationships with other men that are business owners, like locally. You mentioned BNI. I've been with a BNI group for 8 years, but the level of intimacy for, like, there's a couple guys that I've gotten to know pretty well, but they've never been as vulnerable as you are when there's no distractions, and when you take a lot of the walls down, and you get in a place where, oh, okay, there's this gentleman over here. He's got a business in Indiana, and he's struggling with the same things I am. And this is a place where we can talk about this. And the interesting thing about the Iron Deep, what I found is that, yes, the whole experience was awesome. If you can ask anybody that was there, if you know somebody that was there, ask them about it. But it's been afterward. We've got groups that meet, once a month. We've got a Slack channel. We've got email group and text threads from friends that I met there. And that's one of the things that I think that is being really that the foundation is being laid for that afterward of these relationships kind of continuing on, so that their relationship with God can grow deeper. Because I've been part of church events, high school retreats and things like that, where that does happen, where a kid has an absolute change, but afterward that kid's going to go to college, or that kid's going to go off and do this, and they don't have the connective tissue that is those relationships that they formed over those 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
That had happened to me when I was in high school. I had a relation. I met Jesus for the first time on a weekend retreat, but what happened was I went to college and didn't get connected with like-minded church, a church. And so, what happens when you don't get connected to your community of believers? Well, I mean, you can just only imagine. So
No, I agree. I think
that's the best part. One of the best parts of it is the best part. It was great, but the best part is, hey, we're continuing on with these relationships with these guys and we're all. Whenever I heard this word about intimacy, even intimacy with the Father, intimacy with other man, it's kind of like, okay, all right, but when you really, what is that? What is that?
Is
Because
that weird? That's the thing.
Is that weird?
Yeah.
And you know what? It's weird if you make it weird. But if you are, if you're vulnerable in this sense where other men are struggling with the same things that you are, and you can just be real there.
Mm-hmm.
And Scripture tells us that Jesus, struggled with every temptation that we struggle with, and that's why it makes it. It makes him going on the crucifix that much more meaningful, is that there's nothing that he didn't see, feel, or was tempted by that we're not tempted by. And that's the same for all men, all married men, entrepreneur, that common thread that was part of the R&D community. So,
yeah, definitely.
But the intimacy word was something I had that tripped up over me, but that was a mic problem. Not the word intimacy problem. I had to dig in there.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah. I think that word does trip up people, because you think about intimacy, you think about maybe your intimate relationship with your spouse, right? And you think about maybe a physical intimacy with your spouse, and I think that can really trip up people. But for me, really, I think Iron Deep is number one. I think the thing that I kind of like what you talk about with the BNI group, and the thing about some of these other groups that I've been a part of is people don't really know me. They know what I've told them. They know about my business a little bit, but really they don't really know the real me, and they don't know everything about me, and I haven't really taken the masks off. So I think, again, what Iron Deep was designed to is to really be known and to really know. So I think intimacy for me is, do I really know Michael Stansbury? Does he really know me? Does he really and does he really care about me? If my wife is sick, and I call up Michael Stansbury and he says, I'm going to pray for Brett and his wife, is he really going to do that? Does he really care? Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what intimacy is. That if people were to reach out, do they really want you to succeed? Do they really care about you? If you're not only if you're struggling with something, are they really there for you? Do they really want to be there for you? And when you're succeeding, and are they celebrating with you? And are they super happy for you? And a lot of times we don't have that. Either way,
right.
People are struggling. People are like, oh, I'm going to pray for you, but I really don't care. Let's just be radically honest. I really don't care because it's not affecting my life. If you're succeeding and you're killing it at business and you're awesome and you're telling me about it, like most people, that's great. But you know what? It makes me kind of feel bad because I'm not there, and I want to be there. And I want you to be worse. I want you to fail a little bit more, Michael.
I've been both those people. I've been both those people. Like, why is he killing it and I'm not?
So I think intimacy is both of those scenarios, and you really are there for them. If they're struggling, you really want to be there for them and pray for them and be a good brother. You really want to celebrate with them. That's intimacy. And really intimacy with the Father is the same thing. Do you know him? Does he he really knows you, obviously, but do you know that he really knows you? And what is he really saying about you? And that's just, again, it's just that's that relationship component. And it's just that deeper component. That's really where Iron Deep is. It's it's iron sharpening iron. We're there for each other. We're sharpening each other, but we're also going deep. This isn't a friend group that we're just going to, we do have a lot of fun, and we kick it up, and we're playing games and foosball and all that stuff, but we have a lot of fun. But we are going deeper too. I want this to be that deeper brotherhood, that we are there for each other. I'm kind of tired of living life with shallowness. I don't know about you, but I feel like we are so shallow right now. We really, if you think about it, our culture is designed for shallowness. We have shallow relationships. We have shallow thoughts. We don't think deep anymore. We don't dig deep into the Bible. We're going from this to that. We're shifting from social media to whatever else is going on. We never pause. We never undistracted. We never do anything like that. We're just completely shallow creatures with shallow relationships. I don't know. I'm just kind of sick of it. I don't know about you.
The Iron Deep team sent that book recently over Christmas, and I was reading through it, and I was reading about this gentleman that does manuscripts, and he actually writes with a pen. And what was interesting is about how much time that he takes to write. And now my handwriting looks like I wrote it as fast, like a doctor, like you're getting a prescription for me.
Yeah.
I have that type of signature. You're used to, as a real estate guy, right? You go to a closing table and you're just like, you don't even look at the documents. Whatever. You're just signing away.
Yeah.
This guy takes like more time just to go from here to here. You can see this. So, and what was amazing is, and that's how this, and he was talking about, and that's how sometimes even as you were talking about relationships, most people are just shallow and transactional and very short-term thinking. And that, and sometimes we go to, we take our, and I'm so guilty of this is, hey, let's check the box today. Let's get in scripture. Let's read I've got to read this today, and I'll read it. I'll write something down. And then I'm worried about, I got these tasks I got to take care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of just sitting in it and sitting in it. And one thing about the one thing that Iron Deep did really well is with everybody, you just got to sit in there and really hear their stories. Mm. And I was amazed about, so we when we were there for a while with my little small group, 4 hours went by and it seemed like it went by in 10, 15 minutes.
Wow. That's crazy because when we're designing it and we're like thinking I think we had a couple hours for that, or 2 hours, and I'm like, man, that's a long time but yeah, that's awesome that you guys kind of flew by. And I think we never sit and really just think. We're always just on to the next thing. So I think, and it takes time with these events and stuff. It just takes time to unwind, to unravel. And sometimes it can be really uncomfortable, but it just takes time to build that depth of the relationship with God and each other, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's cool.
Yep. All right, so we talked a little bit about what Iron Deep did. Where's Iron Deep going?
Yeah, no, that's great. So number one, Michael Stansbury is actually coming on, and he's going to be doing some interviews with me. So I'm going to be doing, a lot of the interviews like I've always done. Michael Stansbury, he's coming on. He's going to do a couple of interviews and with some guests. So he's jumping on board. So one of the things that I want, that with all that being said, is I feel like God's been leaning on me, and he's saying there needs to be more faces and there needs to be more voices, that it can't just be my voice. More faces, more voices, speaking with a singular purpose, and that's his purpose, right? And I think that's one thing. You're going to be seeing some more faces and some more voices, not just Brett Snodgrass, whether it's videos or podcasts. And, but it's going to have a very similar tone because, it's going to be with the Iron Deep DNA, the Iron Deep way. So that's one thing that we're going to be doing. And then obviously if you go to irondeep.com, we are doing some more events. But I think that we're going to be doing these retreats, and that's typically their onboarding process, because I feel like if you really want to get to know who Iron Deep is, if you really want to get to know the DNA, you need to come to a retreat, because I can talk to you for 30 minutes over the phone, but you're not going to really understand it unless you kind of come to one of these awakening retreats. So the first step always is come to an awakening retreat. But really where we're going is just this in-depth community of guys. So we're forming this community. We have, 20-some guys that have came. But here's the invitation. So I'll just kind of wrap it up with this. The invitation to be in Iron Deep, and if you want to be a part of Iron Deep, is really to raise your hand. And the invite is basically, do you really want everything that you are, your identity, your purpose, and your legacy, everything that you're doing in your business, your families, to be all about for Christ, all about the kingdom? That's the invitation. It's not, oh, we have some business guys and they also go to church sometimes. We have some business guys, but they say they're Christians, and that's what it is. It's not that. The invitation is Iron Deep, is if you're raising your hand and you come to this awakening event and you want to be part of this community, are you willing to surrender your life, your business, your family, and you want to be around some other guys that have that same heart posture? That's what Iron Deep's going to be, and that's the invitation. So if you're interested in that, go check out Iron Deep. I'd love to see you at a Men's Awakening retreat. We're still forming some of the details with all that right now, but that's where we're going to be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have a saying that I've latched on to that I heard a couple of years ago: all of Christ for all of life. It's really one of those things you just think deeply about, because sometimes guys compartmentalize and they say, well, on Sunday, you got me, Lord. And on Saturday, you may have me for a little bit.
Yeah.
But Monday through Friday, it's all business, and I'm just going to go and try and do this. But
yeah,
and the Iron Deep, yeah.
And I want to put just another detail in there too, because I don't want people to think that like we're perfect, like that we're not doing anything wrong. Like, we're still broken. We're still train wrecks most of the time. Like, we're still trying to figure this out, trying to walk the narrow path, but I'm messing up, and I'm making mistakes, making errors every single day. But the heart posture behind it is, I'm going to slip up. I'm going to fall because I'm human, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to fall off the path sometimes. Right. But the difference is, that's where Iron Deep comes in. That's where these other guys saying, hey, Brett, I've been seeing this, and can you, and my desire though is to live that out. I'm not teeter-tottering. I'm not saying, I kind of want Christian a little bit. I want Jesus a little bit. But I like, this other stuff too. I'm all in. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to mess up. But my heart posture is like, hey guys, but I want to be all in. I'm desiring to be all in. So I want to put that out there.
Yeah. Awesome. So. Well, Brett, we did, I think 35 minutes there about where we're going, where the Brett Snodgrass podcast is going. So it looks like just to wrap up, right? We've got a new podcast label. This is where we're going. We got a new YouTube channel. And, but again, if you're interested, we'd love to see you at the retreats. That's the first step. And then reach out to us. And if you have any questions about what it is and where the next one is, and we'll go from there. But Mr. Snodgrass, take us away.
Yeah, no, sounds good. Thanks, guys, for just being on the show today. So this is basically the final episode of the Brett Snodgrass Podcast. We're transitioning into the entrepreneur's journey. We're going to do another episode with Michael. I'm going to kind of talk about him and ask him some questions just about his involvement with Iron Deep and this new podcast. And we'll also just share a little bit about, why don't we call it the Iron Deep Podcast? And then we'll be talking about some other things coming in the future as well. So check out the next episode of The Entrepreneur's Journey with Michael Stansbury. We'll see you guys.